everybody, it's Webby. Welcome back to another video. Today, as you can see, we're having a look at the 2021 Hyundai i30n. This is the top of the range premium model, and it's also got the brand new 8-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox, something I've actually been looking forward to driving and reviewing for quite a while now. So I'm keen to see how this car compares to sort of like the beloved Golf GTi that I own, as well as obviously many others. Because when this car first came out back in sort of 2017, 2018, you could only get it with a manual gearbox. So now that Hyundai brought out this 8-speed dual clutch, is it still going to be as good as that original car was, or in actual fact is it going to be a bit better? Hopefully in this review we'll find out, so come and join me and let's see what we think of it. So the first thing you'll notice from the front of the car, it's got the new sort of Hyundai family grille. It's got a little red line going across the bottom of the car, so that denotes that this is the N model. Under the bonnet, we've still got the same 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine that was found in the first generation model. Power is now up to 206 kilowatt, and torque is raised to 392 newton meters. So that's a fairly sort of good increase over the previous model. As I said, this one's got the 8-speed dual clutch gearbox. The turbocharger has also been uprated. Some of the internals have been uprated on the actual engine itself. So it should make for a really good combination and be better than the previous version, which was still a fantastic car in its own right. So I'm really keen to see what this is like once we get it out on the open road. So coming around to the side of the car, so we've got these brand new 19-inch forged alloy wheels, and each wheel is 3.5 kilos lighter than the previous model. So you're saving 14 kilos just in the weight of the wheels, which is pretty impressive really. I wouldn't want to have to replace one of those because I reckon that'd be quite expensive though. Standard tyres are the Pirelli P0. I personally would have liked to see Michelin Pilot Sport 4s, as I just think they're a slightly better all-round tyre. But you know, you're not going to complain about Pirelli P0s, are you? They're a pretty good tyre. In terms of colours, this is the Performance Blue, the hero colour for the N range. You can also get white, red, black, a new colour called Shadow Grey, which is a little bit like sort of the Audi Nardo Grey, and then another darker grey as well. So there's a good choice of colours there for you. So being that this is the premium model with the automatic gearbox, you get a panoramic sunroof as standard, which is actually quite nice. Pricing for this car is around $57,000 on the road. There's nothing you need to add to this. This is all standard. So if you think $57,000 for a fully loaded car, if you compare that against the new Mark 8 Golf GTi, that's just under $60,000 basic, no extras at all. If you want a sunroof on the Golf, you've got to pay more, and then it becomes quite an expensive car. You get into sort of mid-60,000s. So you're looking sort of about a $7,000 or $8,000 difference between similarly spec'd cars. And I guess then you've got to decide, do you want something which is more of a driver's car, or do you want something that's maybe a little bit more luxurious but still a bit sporty at the same time? Once I've driven a Golf GTi, I might be able to answer that question for you. Coming around to the back of the i30n, and it's good to see we've still got two fat exhaust pipes, and they're proper exhaust pipes as well, and boy do they make a good noise. They sound absolutely fantastic. It's probably one of the big selling points for this car. It's kind of got that old sort of fashioned hot hatch feel about it. It doesn't feel like it's been watered down by all the sort of rules and regulations of cars that are now coming into Australia. It still feels like it's got that old sort of, yeah, that old hot hatch feel. It sounds fantastic really, which again, further on in the video when we get to drive the car, I'll play you some exhaust sounds because honestly you'll love it. As you can see, there's actually a fairly decent amount of boot space back here, just under 400 litres with the seats up. You've got this cross brace back here, which is obviously designed to bring more stiffness to the chassis for improved handling, but when you fold the seats down to increase the boot space, it does get a little bit in the way. But you know, hats off to Hyundai for trying to make a car that handles really well, but is still practical at the same time. So in the back of the i30n, it's pretty comfortable back here, I've got to say. I've got a decent amount of legroom in front of me. I can't quite get my feet under the driver's seat, which is a bit disappointing, so you can't really stretch your legs out too far. Like I say, I've got plenty of space. The driving seat's actually in my driving position. I'm 5'7", so that's actually, you know, quite sort of nice. Headroom is, yeah, there's not heaps of headroom back here. Like I say, I'm not particularly tall. It is nice when you've got the sunroof blind open though. It lets heaps of light into the car, so it feels nice and airy. It doesn't feel claustrophobic or anything like that. So that's actually really nice. It's disappointing that there's no rear air vents for the air conditioning though. and there's no USB charging points either. Things that might sort of become apparent if you've got a couple of kids in the back and you're going on a long journey, because they're soon going to get sort of pretty hot and tired and grumpy. So yeah, that might be a bit of a concern for sort of parents with young kids. You do get a couple of ISOFIX child seat points on the two outer seats though, and then you've got the fold down armrest with a couple of cup holders there in the middle, so it is good to see that. The interior of the i30n is actually quite nice. I really like these leather and suede sports seats. Although they're not electric, they're only manually adjustable, you can get quite comfortable quite easily. The steering wheel we can adjust height and reach, so getting the perfect driving position doesn't take too much effort. In terms of the steering wheel, yeah, it's quite nice. It's got some little blue stitching just on the sort of inner rim. You've got the blue drive mode button there to switch between your different drive modes. You've got the N mode button, that's where everything comes to life and it's full sort of nutter mode. Then you've got like your cruise control, you've got your audio and your phone and bits and pieces, so it's fairly sort of standard stuff. You've then got these really cool paddles around here so you can do the gear shifts manually. It's a shame it's not flat bottom, that would have been quite cool and give it an extra sort of sporty feel, but hey ho, it does the job. In terms of the actual dashboard, this is a bit that disappoints me a little bit about this car, because when you look at sort of the overall design, it's sort of quite bland, it's a bit dull. You could just be in like a base model i30, to be honest with you. It's got a nice infotainment system on top of the dash there. That's actually a bit of a saving grace, to be honest, because it's just sort of, yeah, sort of grey plastic and not very sort of, doesn't feel very premium, to be honest. It would have been nice if they'd taken the blue of these buttons in here and maybe put them around the air vents or around the air vents here as well, just to give it a little bit more colour, or even this section around here around the air conditioning controls. That would have been quite nice, because it is quite dull in here. Yeah, so apart from these little blue bits here, blue on the steering wheel and the blue bit here, there's not much colour in the cabin. So yeah, it does feel almost Germanic in its kind of like appearance, if you like. The dashboard in front of you is sort of fairly standard stuff. It's analog dials as opposed to one of these full digital displays that you get in something like the Golf GTi. But it's really easy to read. You don't have any problems when you're driving along the road. The infotainment system, as I said, it's probably one of the better ones out there, to be fair. You can basically do everything you want to do on there. The only problems I've found with it is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are both wired, so you have to plug your cable in to use them. And I keep finding that when I plug my iPhone in, the Apple CarPlay will work for a couple of minutes and all of a sudden it will cut out. And then a little bit later it will start working again, which was a little bit annoying, because normally I just plug my phone in when I'm in my Golf and it just works perfectly, it's absolutely fine. But I was speaking to a friend of mine, Luke, who's got one of these brand new i30Ns with a DCT gearbox, and he said actually if you get a better cable, it handles the data transfer rate better from the phone to the car. So I thought, well, you know, I'll give it a go, see if it works. So I bought a new cable. It is a bit better. It took longer before it decided that Apple CarPlay wasn't going to work. So maybe there's a particular type of cable you need to get to make it work properly. So that's a little bit frustrating for me, because I do like using my Apple CarPlay to use Google Maps or listen to Spotify or something like that. So that's a little bit frustrating. The rest of it is absolutely fine. On here, this is where you can go in to adjust things what we call the N mode. So on the N button on the steering wheel, there's the N mode, plus when you hit it a second time, it goes into custom mode. And custom mode is something you can access when you go into the N mode here on the dash, and you hit the custom, and then you can individually adjust all the different settings for your engine, your gearbox, your exhaust, how hard you want the suspension, how much weight you want on the steering. So it's fully adjustable, which is fantastic really, because obviously everybody likes something slightly different. So that I really do like. I think that's a great way of doing things. You've got the sort of haptic buttons across the front to get your main functions, but it's nice that you actually get a proper volume button. Volkswagen could pay attention to that, because their slidey thing on the Golf GTi looks like it could be a little bit fiddly. Underneath that, we've then got the normal sort of climate control buttons there, dual zone climate, so nothing too sort of out of the ordinary there. Just down below that, you've got a wireless charging pad for your phone. You've got two 12-volt power sockets there, plus also a USB-A socket as well. So plenty of charging options there. Then we come back, we've got the gear stick, Heated seats for driver and passenger, which is quite nice. Heated steering wheel. Not sure we need that here in Australia, but hey ho. Front and rear parking sensors, which is nice to see. A button there where you can switch between the view with the cameras, and then that one disengages the traction control. So it is kind of fairly standard stuff. There's nothing, there's not too many sort of big surprises in here, which is quite nice. But it is just a nice, it's a nice place to be. But like I say, that whole area of grey over there does disappoint me slightly. So driving along normally, just the standard normal mode. Suspension is fairly comfortable. Gearbox changes nice and smoothly. You could be at any i30 really. Such is the level of comfort from the setup they've put in the normal mode. The dashboard is all very similar to a standard i30. It's only the little blue buttons on the steering wheel that kind of give the game away a little bit, and the blue stripe on the gear stick. So that normal mode does allow you to daily drive this car. It just means that it becomes a really good hot hatch in the fact that it can do the daily stuff on normal mode, but at the same time, if you want to flick it into sports mode, go out and find some nice twisty roads, have a bit of fun, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde car. It almost does a better job of being a GTI than the GTI. So the new turbocharger, that is one of the obviously upgrades for this year, as I mentioned earlier. It does feel like it starts to spin up a bit later than say a Golf GTI. The GTI seems to sort of have its peak torque a little bit lower, or it certainly feels that way. Because it feels like it takes longer for the turbo to wake up on this. But then once it does wake up, it does get going pretty quick. Which in that respect makes it feel more like a Golf R than a Golf GTI as a comparison. There are a few downsides to this car. It's not all sort of 100% good news. And for me personally, I'd like it to have adaptive cruise control, because I do miss that from my Golf GTI. Although standard cruise control is perfectly fine, if you're going on a long journey, the adaptive cruise control would be a little bit more beneficial, I think. Particularly if you're in sort of stop-start traffic, or you keep slowing down, speeding up. Just having that adaptive system would be a lot better. And I know it works really well because I've driven other Hyundais that have got the same system, and it is really, really good. So that's one of my bugbears about it. I also would prefer to have like the felt lining on the inside of the door pockets like you get on my Golf. Hasn't got the rear air vents, hasn't got any USB points in the back or any power points. So it's missing a few sort of creature comforts, which is a bit disappointing if I'm honest. But then I suppose a lot of people who are just buying this as a driver's car may not be as fussed as me about having those creature comforts in their car. I guess it's bits and pieces like that I've got used to in my car. It's like whenever you sort of think about changing your car, you think, oh yeah, I've got this in my car, I'd really want that again. Or you don't want to lose certain functions that you've got in your current car. Would it stop me buying one? I don't know, probably not. Because you get used to certain things, don't you? And after, I've had this car for a week and I've got used to not having adaptive cruise control. So I think it wouldn't put me off buying one. And again, the air vents in the back wouldn't put me off buying one. I just think for $57,000, the car should have those sort of features really, shouldn't it? An interesting thing happened to me the other day while I was driving along actually. And another 2021 i30n came up next to me at the traffic lights. And we kind of looked at each other and he gave me the thumbs up. Which I thought was kind of unusual, because it's normally those kind of cult cars like Minis or Beetles or stuff like that where there was kind of that little sort of camaraderie on the road. But it was quite nice to see from a fellow i30 driver, giving the thumbs up, and it was almost like a nod of respect, mutual respect, because we both had the same car, and it's almost like us both saying to each other, good choice, you've made the right choice in what car you've got. Obviously he didn't know that this isn't my car, but you know, nonetheless it was just a nice kind of moment as I was driving along. So there you have it then, that's the review for the i30n with the new 8-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox. I have to say I've really enjoyed my week with this car. It's been a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I'm used to driving a dual clutch transmission in my Golf GTi, so it was interesting to see how the Hyundai version was going to compare. And I have to say I think they've done an absolutely outstanding job with this new gearbox. It took a bit longer for them to bring it out than they probably hoped for, but the time that it took extra to develop it and make sure it was going to be the best gearbox out there, I think was well worth the wait. I'd love to know your thoughts. Would you buy the DCT version or would you still go for a manual? I actually did a poll on my Instagram stories recently, and the DCT did actually come out on top. So it does show that people are sort of leaning more towards automatic gearboxes nowadays. So that was quite an interesting sort of result. So if you're in the market for a hot hatch now, would you consider the i30n or would you look at something different? I'd have to put it at the top of my list, I'm afraid. As much as I love my Golf GTIs, until I drive a Mark A GTI, it might change my mind. But this has absolutely blown me away at how good it is, just at everything that it does, the daily driving stuff, the fan and the twisties, the noise from the exhaust, the gearbox. There's a couple of disappointments in the lack of adaptive cruise control and rear air vents, but you could argue they're sort of minor points because after all this is a hot hatch and it's designed to be fun. So if you've enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section below for me. And as usual, I'll come back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and keep an eye out for the next video coming soon when I'm getting to try out the manual version of the i30n. So keep an eye out for that video too. So that just leaves me to say goodbye, and I'll see you all in the next one.